Hello and welcome to Studio RC. My name is Max and I am an alcoholic. I want to welcome you today. We're beginning a brand new series. Start looking at the 12 traditions of AA. Now, at Recovery Church, we have our values. We have our 12 values. But one of the things we do is we definitely believe in the 12 steps, and the 12 traditions we use as a guide. Whereas in the AA fellowship specifically, that's kind of what guides their meetings and the business end, and the thought, or one of the joke is the steps keep us from committing suicide, and the traditions keep us from committing homicide. Now, I don't know if that might be taking it too far, but there are a lot of great principles in the 12 traditions. So we're going to take a look each week at a different tradition. And this will be the same intro each time. And because there are 12 traditions, it comes out of the 12 and 12 book, what we're going to do is we're going to take 12 minutes for each tradition and see how much we cover and what we can figure out about that. Now, one of the things I know, sometimes traditions, they're not the sexiest thing going. Sometimes when people find, if you go to a meeting and it's a tradition meeting, you're like, oh, it's a tradition meeting. I think that sometimes the more you get into them and the more you understand them, there are so many transferable principles, not only for the group, but for the individual as well. And so we're going to take a look at that and just see how that guides us, and also how that impacts us at Recovery Church, and how those traditions, how they kind of live themselves out in our context. But so we'll take this opportunity. We're going to look at each one, a different one each week. And so let's jump in right now. Thanks so much, and come on this journey as we take a look at AA's 12 traditions. For this episode, we are going to tackle the seventh tradition. The seventh tradition, one that is read at almost every meeting, because when we send the basket around, we say the seventh tradition. So what does the seventh tradition say? Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Let me say that again. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. All right, let's get the 12 minutes on the clock and see what we can do in this 12 minutes to tackle this. Passing the basket at meetings is one way of meeting our responsibilities for the work of AA and carrying the message. Our own contributions support the group, the general service offices, and all AA activities. That's how on the recovery side. Interestingly, when we give at Recovery Church, it covers our Recovery Church campus, and our hope is that it also supports the Recovery Church movement, which is the umbrella over all of Recovery Church that helps to initiate and plant new churches. And so when we were active in our addiction, the alcoholic, the addict, we were always looking for a handout in one way or another. And part of personal recovery comes in making ourselves into responsible human beings, responsible, fully self-supporting, which is a great concept individually. It's a great concept for the group, and it's a great concept for the overall entity. Fully self-supporting, and we decline outside contributions. Experience has shown us that AA as a whole needs to be self-supporting and independent. When outside contributors come, we say we have our own way, we pay our own way, we have our way of doing things, because we found that sometimes the lure of money has led people astray and off the path of the primary purpose. Also, sometimes outside entities can prove to have strings attached, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, it's important to be practical. A recovery group can hardly hold its regular meetings on a street corner. An empty basket won't fill a coffee urn, and that goes for Recovery Church as well as a meeting. As soon as we as individuals become active in a group, we start to learn how many expenses are involved in making its meeting effective. Our horizon broadens. In my own home group, one of the things that we do, in addition to being an online for Recovery Church, I have an online home group, and we send out big books. And the big books, that's a great idea. We'll send out big books. The thing of it is, to send out a big book and to ship it anywhere in North America, which is great, costs about $22. That's not free. It's something that we put a lot of value on, but we need to make sure that we've raised the money so that we can perform that service, because we think it's so important. It's so important that we're willing to put some of our funding toward that. And each group will choose how to do that. And that brings us, for the AA group, what about intergroup or central office? So many of us called to ask for help. Is there a meeting in the area? How do I get help? How do I get sober? Phone companies don't give free services, even to something as good as AA. And beyond our own locality, we learn that AA General Service Office, the one up in New York, the work it does for groups everywhere. AA activity is self-supporting at all levels. Every case, the responsibility comes back to us as the addict and alcoholic, the individual members, for we are AA. And the same is said for Recovery Church. Now, in Recovery Church, we have a couple different models of how you might plan a campus. And so being fully self-supporting can look different for different campuses. Let's say you're at a church, and the church, it's a ministry of the church, or even multiple churches in the area. They may say, we'll provide this space to you for free because it's a ministry of the church. And so they're helping underwrite some of the cost. If you become, now with that, if you're under a church, there may be certain stipulations that the church is, we don't want you to play certain music, or we don't want you to do a certain thing, or we want you to do a certain thing. So some of that sometimes comes with some strings attached, if you want to look at it that way. That might be a little cynical. If you're independent and you just start a Recovery Church, independent of any other church, you have a lot of freedom and flexibility, but you don't necessarily have the security. You have to come up with the rent wherever you are. You have to come up with, the coffee or treats or whatever, and figure out how you're gonna do that. And so, and in that process, how are you going to? One of the things that we want our Recovery Church campuses to do is to support the overall umbrella of the Recovery Church movement. And if you've planted a church, you know how much the movement, the staff of Recovery Church does to help you launch. And they visit and they help guide and help you at every step of the process. Well, that requires funding. And so one of the things is our hope that the campuses will support that, especially the way they've been supported to be launched. Now, what's interesting is early on in AA, and this was an interesting fact that John D. Rockefeller Jr., so a Rockefeller, very, very wealthy, and an early friend to AA said, I'm afraid that money's going to spoil this thing called recovery. And honestly, a few AAs had already reached that same conclusion, and gradually this small minority actually became the majority, as experience showed that members themselves could provide enough to finance AA and help us with our primary purpose. We don't want to have the handout again like we did in our addiction. Asking non-members for money to help support AA, help support us with new chairs, or help us, to do this, or that. We're looking for a donation. In Tradition 7, there is a note of realism. Handsome gifts, we have said, may have strings attached. So one of the things that's interesting that AA does, they put a limit of $10,000 is the amount that members may leave to AA in their wills. So you can leave money to AA or the General Service, you can leave it to Recovery Church, but in AA there's a limit of $10,000, and there's a limit of $5,000 that may be contributed annually while living. So you're not going to give a $10,000 donation to your local AA meeting. And the truth is, I think sometimes people think it can buy influence, and in AA that's not a case. Money poses a problem for the group, for the treasurer, when the treasury grows too fat, too big, beyond a prudent reserve. And normally most groups try to have a prudent reserve, like they have a month or 2 or maybe 3 months worth of rent, in case of emergencies, but they try to pay each month, but they have this prudent reserve. Squabbling over the use of the spare cash, groups have lost their unity and strayed from their purpose. I think it should go toward this. No, I think it should go toward, and it becomes a problem. And there's one simple solution that strengthens the unity in recovery and advances the purpose of recovery, is give the excesses to AA's activities and services. And that's, again, sort of for AA, it's the general service. In regards to Recovery Church, it is the Recovery Church movement, that umbrella. The thought, self-supporting alcoholics or addicts, who've heard of such a thing? That seems so foreign, which is why it's such a great concept for people to understand how this applies to them as an individual. I want to be fully self-supporting in my life. I don't want to rely on somebody else or always be asking for a handout. I want to be fully self-supporting. It's becoming independent in our recovery. Everybody knows that active alcoholics scream that they have no trouble that money can't cure, always with a handout. No, I got the scheme I can figure out. I got this deal. I could do this. Yeah. And when a society composed of entirely of alcoholics say it's going to pay its bill, you know what? That's really news. And it made news when they said that. In the early times, when AA first started, everyone was broke. And so it's funny because they thought, we're doing all this good stuff. We deserve a pile of money. What great things AA would be able to do with it. But oddly enough, people who had money thought otherwise, like John D. Rockefeller was like, I think it could spoil this. They had figured that it was high time that we now, sober, paid our own way. So our fellowship stayed poor because it had to. And it's really funny. Alcoholics could spend lavishly on 12-step cases trying to help the person overcome their alcoholism, but they had a terrific aversion to dropping money into a meeting place hat for group purposes. And it's funny, how tight people got when it came to things like, we need to repair the chairs, and no one's putting money in. But you have somebody who, is hard on their luck in a 12-step call, and you're like, oh, I'll help you. Addicts and alcoholics are often all or nothing people. Our reaction to money absolutely proves this. And on every lip were the words, you can't mix AA and money. And we shall have to separate the spiritual from the material. Members have tried in the past to make money out of their AA connection, and we feared we'd be exploited. And we talked about that in Tradition 6 a little bit. We even look for grateful benefactors. A result, there was something outside, sometimes outside interference in our affairs. Some examples: a group was given $5,000 to do with it as it would, and the hassle over that chunk of money played havoc for years for that group. Frightened by the complications, some groups refused to have even a penny in their treasuries. They're like, it's going to cause problems. We can't do that. AA has to function, and so having that prudent reserve is very important. They give this example. Bill W. is in the office and he's complaining, and they need help in the office, and they've asked the groups to send $1 a member, and no one was doing it, and he was getting very frustrated. This prize slippy comes in who's drunk, and he puts his arm around him, gives him $5, which at the time he was only making $30 a week. That was a lot of money that he gave to him, trying to get him on his feet. That night he goes to a meeting, and his home group needs support because they're trying to keep their the rent, and they're not able to pay their rent. And he reaches in, he sees a quarter, he's like, you know what, I'm only going to put a dime in. And what he realized, and this is important to know, and this will sort of be as we kind of close the concept, is so often we boast about our generosity, especially in regards to treating 12-step calls or people in need. But then when we're confronted with specific needs from our group or those, we don't always step up. And the truth is that it's an ego-feeding proposition to help people just for the sake of helping people, to give them the money. But when it comes to that's bad for us if it's ego-feeding, and it's bad for the person who's trying to get sober. That doesn't help them. And this is a place where spirituality and money would mix, and that was in the hat. We needed to give generously. And we have said this already, but whoever pays the piper is apt to call the tune, they say. That's the old expression. And if certain groups or even the foundation as a whole obtain money from outside sources, its trustees might be tempted to run things without reference to the wishes of AA as a whole, the group conscience. So they declared the principle that AA must always stay poor. Bare running expenses plus a prudent reserve would be the group, as well as the general service office. That would be the policy. That principle of corporate poverty was firmly and finally embedded in AA tradition. AA presented a strange but refreshing spectacle. Approving editorials here and abroad generated a wave of confidence in the integrity of AA because we weren't out trying to get money. No one can come in and say, you're just after our money. All you want is our money. That's just not true, and we've lived that out in a very practical way. And so Alcoholics Anonymous has really revived an ideal that its era had almost all the way forgotten, and that's being self-supporting. And it's still just as important today. And so just to close, the overall explanation, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. AA groups should fund themselves. Recovery church campuses should fund themselves without taking money from those outside sources. The biblical concept here is from 2 Corinthians 9:7. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. There is a blessing and a gratitude that comes with giving and giving generously, and we get to be a part of that. And so I encourage you not to miss out on that. And the spiritual concept is self-sufficiency. It fosters responsibility and ensures that the group's agenda remains true to its mission. Stay on the 12 steps, the one goal, the primary purpose, without any external influence. So that's the seventh tradition. I'd love for you to weigh in. Put them in the comments. Put what your experience has been with the seventh tradition. And for some people, the seventh tradition is, in fact, what made them have greater confidence in AA. I guess they're not after my money. They're not trying to they're not. I'm just not a number or a dollar sign. So leave your comment. We encourage you. Like, share, follow. Let Studio RC continue to expand and continue to encourage and influence others about getting and staying sober. So we thank you so much for joining us and continuing in this series of the traditions and Recovery Church, 12 steps, one goal. God bless, and we will see you next time.